And Linda, can you talk a little bit about how you figured out what you wanted to do? We have here in our packets, we have a kind of preliminary project description, which feels like it may have been written fairly early on, I don't know. And then if you can tell us about how you hooked up with Hourglass, and because that, I think, was a really good fit of the right company for the right project.
Yeah. Well, through the New York Theater Workshop and our usual suspects, our extended artistic community, I met Elise many, many years ago, Elise Singer, who's the artistic director. Kate, Ryan, and I started working together. We have a long relationship. I worked with Kate as her director originally. She was a very young writer when I first met her. And we've always had the interest in seeing more lesbian work on the stage, just as from our personal lives and the kind of work, well, we feel it's not being done, you know, so that's what brought us together. We were at the New York Theater Workshop's Dartmouth residency. It was, I think, in 2000, the summer of 2001, and we said we haven't worked together. We were celebrating having known each other for 12 years or something like that, and we really should let's do something. So we decided we would co-author. We hadn't done that, and I had done my work with Lola on Gertrude and Alice, and that had worked out quite well. So we decided, well, maybe we have to adapt the lesbian canon for the stage, right? There are these books that, as a young person coming, you know, into your own, that some of us gravitate to, and certainly the Bebo Brinker books of Anne Bannon are some of those books, along with Ruby Fruit Jungle, The Well of Loneliness. So we thought it would be great to start our oeuvre with our American favorite. So that was the onset of it, and we actually worked on the play for a long time and reached out to other producers. The usual kind of rejection. We actually went down the road with somebody, and I'm not going to get into names, quite a long way, and with kind of just a promise that he was going to do something for us, and it ended up after a year that he wasn't. And Kate said, Linda, we just have to do this ourselves. And actually, Kate and I had already brought Lee Silverman, the director, on. She'd been working with us from early on. And then we decided we were going to do it, but we needed a producing partner, because I have producing skills, obviously, but I've done this kind of work for long enough to know that at a certain point you just need to focus on one part of it. And I wasn't going to be writing the play and producing the play and directing the play and all the rest, which in my 20s I would have, and I did, but now, no. So we actually started, as I say, we started down the road of putting the production together almost before Elise came on board. So it was kind of a collaborative producing venture. Kate and I did a lot of work on the fundraising side of it also, and I helped put the artistic team together as well. I do that in my own job all the time. So it was an interesting collaborative kind of venture of producing, and then I had access to the 4th Street Theater at New York Theater Workshop, which was very fortunate, and that's one of the perks of working there. So we were able to start the play out in a space that I didn't have to pay for, which is amazing. Never happens anymore.
I have to say that looking at the excerpt, the descriptive language from the press release, I feel maybe I'm projecting here or reading into it, but I feel like I see Elise Singer's touch in here. Is this because this description has much more of the tone of the piece kind of in it than the first thing that you came up with?
Well, I think the project description was more grantees. So that there's a difference between grant writing and writing your synopsis, or even making your pitch.
Right.
So I think that the project description was earlier on and drier, and also beyond the sort of trying to give a sense of what the play is about, we contextualize it a lot, which you don't always do, but because this is an adaptation, the author is known and has a following. That was a really important aspect of this project, and important for us to communicate, as much as what the play itself was going to do. Plus, we had an amalgam of 3 books. We took storylines from 3 books and wove them together into something new for the stage. Elise had something to do with it, but I think Kate and I also, it was a collaborative. This writing, as we're describing, was a sort of a collaborative event, and everybody had a hand in it, and the rewriting and editing and passing it around.
But it definitely feels much more, this second language feels much more like buy a ticket.
Well, yeah, this is from the press release,
right,
yes.
And the first one is much more, this is an interesting project.
It's a serious project and you should give us money for it.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. So know your audience,
yes.
know what it is
yes.
you're
yes.
Yeah. Jeni, can you talk a little bit about the synopsis that you brought? Actually, this first one, Girl Science, and it has 3 versions, which I like. I like the fact that we've got 3 versions.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing that happened was when I emailed Larry LaBelle and I asked him if I could use the synopses that we worked on for the conference, which are the last 2, he said, sure, that would be great. And by the way, if you really want something fun, here's what I was using before we started talking. And that's the first one. And so the first one is really, this long one, is what he had been using before. And when we did this play at the conference a few years ago, and what I generally say to playwrights is, send me a synopsis, 3 to 4 sentences, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but we'll work on it, and it's a process. So the second one, he had really tried to take what was in the initial synopsis that he had and break it down a little bit. So in a way, if you look at it, some things are very clear that, getting rid of them didn't really take anything out of talking about the sort of the core of the play. In the first paragraph. The second paragraph is interesting because it is sort of contextualizing, which in some instances can be interesting, but I think in the situation that we're talking about getting people drawn in to come and see the play, it wasn't really exactly what we needed to do at that point. And also, one of the things that of course, I didn't get to work with this last paragraph, which I probably would have cut anyway. But really what I'm trying to do when I start looking at the synopsis is try and make it active, and even making the questions active, and I think the questions asked in this final paragraph were kind of cerebral to me, so.
Like what does it mean to be useful, to be good, to be, right.
Right. So, I'm glad he didn't send me that last paragraph, but the first paragraph, he did a good job of getting rid of some of the extra details about each of the characters that you could really condense into one simple gesture.
So wait, are you looking now at the middle version?
So yes, I'll just jump right to the
okay.
middle version because there's not much I can say about that jump. I think it's condensed. What was really interesting to me, and this is why I think it's good to work with another person on your synopsis, is the middle one was written from the point of view of this character, Joanna, who was this forgotten scientist. And to him, I think she was the most interesting character in terms of scientifically what she did. But in fact, as someone just reading the play, she wasn't the one taking the action initially at the top of the play. So the first thing I wanted to turn around and give the first action of the play to Lois, she's the one who's actually taking the action. So that was a big switch between the second and third synopsis. And it also allowed us to make it more active because when we're talking about Lois, she's being interviewed, which is rather passive, and we don't know what she's being interviewed for, but when I switched it to Lois, it was all about Lois has to make this book happen. And so it became much more active immediately. So that was the first big change that we did there, and also sort of just kind of encapsulating who they each were, up-and-coming historian, eminent 80-year-old scientist.